I hurt myself, Maddie,
How?
because I was playing at nursery and I hurt myself on the blue crate.
Oh no. Are you
Yeah,
okay now, or does it
yeah.
hurt?
It's bleeding now.
Oh no. Did you
Yeah,
get a plaster?
pardon?
Did you get a plaster for it?
No, I got a cold compress when I did it at nursery.
Oh, you've got a cold compress. Well, that will make it better.
Yeah,
Okay.
Oh.
yeah.
Anything else you want to say before you go? Go on then,
I
quickly.
like Triceratops.
You like Triceratops
And T-Rexes.
and T-Rexes. Do you like all kinds of dinosaurs?
Yeah.
Hello, I've flipped the script a little and put this intro after you've seen who the guest already is, so I don't need to tell you that I interviewed Maddy Nutt. Hopefully you saw my adorable eldest child chatting with her because Maddy is simply her hero. It was a lovely, lovely episode with Maddy, so sit back, like, subscribe, everything else, but most of all, enjoy. ¿Qué tal?
Bastante bien, sí.
Good. ¿Y dónde está la carrera?
Este fin de estoy haciendo una carrera en Suecia. Sí. I'm impressed that I know the word for I do know the word for Sweden.
Yeah, to be fair, I'm impressed that I managed to put together where is the race. Just for those who didn't know what I asked, how are you and where's the race? And I will ask you to type out what you said because I will subtitle it later in Spanish. Not a clue how to say half of your response, but I gather that you're well and you're in Sweden.
I am. I'm impressed. You speak multiple languages. You do, don't you?
I speak German and English, so yeah, multiple, I guess, too is. But I can do bits of other languages, and you know as well as like Spanish, you can pick up from watching like La Vuelta, Cabeza de la
Or,
Carrera and things like
or
that.
like Dora the Explorer.
Yeah, that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you're in Sweden. What's cracking over there?
So I had a race on Saturday in Sweden here, but in a different part of Sweden. So we kind of decided to combine two sets of races basically because it makes sense, logistically. So there was a race part of the Gravel Earth series on Saturday, in an area called Bergslagen, which was like beautiful but pouring it down with rain. And then this weekend we're near Halmstad and there's a 3-day stage race. And last year I did all 3 stages of the stage race, came second overall, and like there wasn't good prizes for the overall, and I didn't do as well in the UCI race because of the time trial the day before. So this year I'm just doing stage 2 and 3.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I'm doing stage race, but I'm not doing every stage.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I've been in that situation myself, but only because I couldn't finish the race. It's a completely different situation, I guess. But I hear you got a sprint victory, not an overall victory, but you rolled someone in a sprint.
Yeah, so I'm notoriously not a sprinter. Like I'm incredibly bad at sprinting, but a 4-up sprint at the end, and I somehow took it.
4-up.
Yeah,
I thought it was just going to be a 2-up, but you just.
no, there were 4 of us. To be fair, one girl had managed to throw her derailleur into crash mode, so she only had one gear.
Okay.
But she did used to be on drop. She's very strong. And then the other 2 girls I beat. So yeah, to be fair, I found in the race, I was feeling really good on Saturday, and if there had been probably more people, because there was essentially a gap between us and the group in front of us, like a really big gap. And I found like I was finding our group a bit slow, and like I could have attacked and gone, but then there were so many people in my little group that they would have just got back to me. So I was feeling maybe too good for the group I was in, but then there wasn't kind of a group in between. So I'm kind of not surprised, even though I can't sprint, that I had more left in me at the end because I didn't feel like the race was like super taxing. So I think it was less the sprinting ability and more just like I was less fatigued.
Yeah, and that's what it can turn out to be in the end, isn't it? It's more
Yeah.
freshness than pure sprinting ability, but that must be good for morale. How is the Gravel Earth series going? I believe you're second overall.
Yeah, I'm second overall, and there's only the final left now. So the final's double points. So like actually a lot could change in the final. I really want to cling on, like I want to hold on to a podium in theory. So Gravel Series, I'm second going to the final, but Caroline shifts underneath me in third. And realistically speaking, she's probably going to beat me in the final. So it's more like it depends how many places below her I am, basically, as to whether I can cling on to second or I'll move down to third. But yeah.
Yeah, third would be a heck of an achievement, I feel. And currently leading is at Amity Rockwell, which is a heck of a name. Like, I would love to just have that name. Like, just walking around calling myself Amity Rockwell. Like, it's an amazing name.
No, it's a very cool name, I have to say. I thought my last name quite cool, but then I met Amity and I was like, nah, I think she's taking the last name, the winning last name.
Yeah, is there a lot of camaraderie in the sort of gravel scene? Because like clearly you're going to far-flung places, sometimes like Scotland, but equally like doing Unbound in USA and Sweden and doing the Rift in Iceland. Like you're going all over the shop, and a lot of these riders are going to similar places. So do you gain those bonds really, or how is it?
Yeah, I would say I definitely do. I think more so probably in gravel than people have on the road. There's definitely like a group of us that go to a lot of the same races. So like Amity, for example, we've done quite a few similar races this year. And like definitely I kind of see similar people. And I think particularly Migration Gravel Race, because that was so remote, because that was in
Mm,
Kenya and the Mara, because that was so remote, and also like it was more of an, I'm gonna say, is as much of an emotional mental challenge as physical, because it was like back-to-back days camping in the middle of nowhere, like literally going to the toilet in a hole, that kind of vibe. That I
mm.
think that kind of intensity of environment and race environment kind of forced a lot of us to become friends. So I am friends with like quite a lot of these girls and also some of the guys, or at least like friendly. But yeah, it is quite nice. There is camaraderie. Like I think especially between some people, like Amity and I like would maybe, I don't know, maybe work together a little bit. Or there's other girls who like I'd maybe like if I saw them in a race, this happened like recently actually, the race in Sweden on Saturday, I ended up in a group of girls and like I know I'm really friendly with one of them. And like two of the other girls were in the same kit, so obviously in the same team. Um and like I spoke to the girl I know and I knew that if we could, we would try and work together and get away. So like there is camaraderie, there are relationships between people, which is quite nice because otherwise it's a bit of a lonely sport. But it's also quite nice because you're in different kit representing different teams, so maybe you would work together in certain contexts.
Hmm. Well, yeah, that's always been the thing with cycling anyway, is that kind of it's as much physical as it can get political in a way that, you
Yeah.
have to work together to break the wind and share the load to then beat them on the sprint at the line. It's like, let's work together for now. And then 15 minutes down the road, I'll roll you. It's kind of that weird vibe, isn't it? Um,
Definitely. But I also think there's like with migration, for example, there definitely was an element of you still celebrate each other. Like
mm,
the last stage I won, and I definitely felt like so many of the other riders were so happy for me for that because I raced like an insanely good race for myself, and like people were really like supportive of that. Even if I then beat them. So I think there still is an element of that. Like obviously in the end of the day we're racing, but I think if someone then like if I was working with someone and we got away and then they beat me in a sprint, I'm still gonna be like really well done. Like thanks for working with me for that period of time.
yeah. And just to go on to that final stage of the migration, where you won, like I, I seem to recall, were you fourth going into it and then like just went on a mad one, attacked super early on. I don't know how better to
Yeah.
describe it than just
So
went on a mad one.
I was third, and I think that's so I was third going in, and I think going on a mad one might be exactly how to describe it. Essentially, I think the context that kind of helps the going on a mad one, like describes it, was I think I was holding back a fair bit before the last stage, because it was a 4-day stage race and I'd never done a 4-day stage race with, and the stages were between like 140, one stage was 140k, but the majority were like up to 190 kilometers, and there was one day that was like less miles, it was like maybe 160 kilometers, but a huge amount of climbing. So in terms of physically doing 4 days back to back like that, it was a physical challenge to do all four. And I think maybe I underestimated what level my fitness was at and my ability to recover and do that. So I definitely think I was holding back. And I said at the time, like I can remember someone was like videoing me in the third stage, like cheering me on, and I was like, no, I'm holding back, because they were like, go Maddie, like you're just off the podium for this day. And I was like, no, I'm holding back, I'm saving something for tomorrow. And I think I did that a little bit. So there was reason to the madness. But on the fourth day, I kind of, yeah, I had a few people pep talk me on the start line, and they were just like, just go for it. Like, I had a few people say to me, I reckon you could win this stage, or like, I think I had someone say like, you're better than you think you are. Like, you could definitely win this stage. And I took all these words and I just went, and yeah, I went from literally from the neutral, straight out the neutral, just went head down, didn't really look back until maybe about half an hour's time, where a media car came up next to me and they were like, you've literally got minutes on the rest of the girls, keep going.
Wow.
And I ended up winning it by over 35 minutes as well, so it wasn't just like a small victory.
No, that was kind of crazy. And how did you find it, like that concept of holding back? Because I know, like, I've done races before where I've gone, oh yeah, I'll pace this, I'll go easy, and then and then the flag drops, and you're like, oh, there's a race on actually. I better get, like, how did you find that to control yourself and hold back?
It's hard. I would say it was easier in that I don't think I held back that much at the beginning of any of the races. So that moment, I still kind of put a bit of pace in because I wanted to get in a good group. But it helped that I had a problem on the first day with something with my bike, which meant that I was forced to stop, and that pushed me back into a slower group. So, or actually, I was riding on my own a lot for the first day. So the first day I was kind of forced to slow down. So that helped. And then the second day on the really hilly stage, I can't remember really why. I held back on the climb because there was a really long climb. It was like maybe a 30-kilometer climb into like really high elevation. And I held back a little bit just because I was like, I'm going to be careful, I'm going to be careful. And then I ended up in a group of men who were just moving a bit slower. And I didn't want to attack them, even though I felt like it was maybe a little bit too easy a pace. So I think just wanting to stay with people all day meant I went slower on that day, because I just rode with them the whole day. So that made it easier. But yeah, I think I'm relatively good at like calming down in those situations and like being sensible and thinking about my future self. And I think at the end of the day, I had this overwhelming feeling of, I don't want to not finish this race. Like, I don't want to be one of those people who turns around on the fourth day and is just dead and I can't finish it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually, and yeah, it must take a lot of mental fortitude. Speaking of huge challenges and making it through, and you know, Tracker 360, that
Yeah.
like I believe that was quite a challenge. In terms of, well, for a start, it's 360 kilometers. That's a long old day.
Yeah, I think that race, I'm gonna have to do it next year for sure, because I think it went
It
so wrong.
yeah, well, it strikes me as one of those races that you finish, you go, that was awful.
Never again,
I'll do
yeah.
it again, yeah. But then,
Yeah,
like, immediately you're like, ah, I'll sign up again, actually.
yeah, 100%. I think I finished and I felt absolutely awful, probably the worst I've ever felt in my life. The next day I felt broken. And then I kind of just reflected on how many things went wrong that were controllable and that I can improve on next time. And I was like, do you know what? I want to go back and see how I can do if I actually properly sort all those things out. So like, if I'm not vomiting, I'm not dehydrated. Those two things were linked. And like, if I've trained a bit more for that kind of distance, like, actually, how could I do? Because I don't think I did myself justice in that race necessarily. I still did well, but I think the dehydration and all of that like really threw me off. But it was funny. It was good content.
Yeah,
Is what
yeah.
I'd
Oh,
say.
I totally enjoyed. And if anyone is interested, Maddie does a video log on YouTube, and Tracker is one of those, involving kind of wolfing down rice,
Or
and
not
try
or
well, yeah,
trying to. Yeah.
trying to and having to try and wolf it down as quick as it was coming back out, without getting too graphic, but that was kind of how it felt. Um, but yeah, like how you, I guess, thinking about it, like I know you have family and friends support in terms of being kind of quasi soigneurs, and sort of helping out at feed zones. But how are you finding the Ribble Collective vibe of it? It's kind of, yeah, I've used that term already, but like quasi like privateer, quasi team. Like it's that kind of
Yeah.
weird middle ground.
It's definitely a weird middle ground. I think there's an element of you still have the logistics and organization of finding support, because the Ribble Collective doesn't come with like soigneurs, basically. You don't have a Swanee. And I think that is something that almost every race is something I have to think about, especially the longer stuff, being like, can I get someone, or like, can I hire someone for the day or something like that? So there's an element of you do have to think about that. You still have other people riding for the collective. So if someone else is doing the race, it might be that like they have a partner who's helping, or you have a friend who's helping, or someone. And I think we do all try and like help each other out where we can.
Hmm.
But yeah, it definitely is like it's this weird middle ground where we're not like entirely on our own, but at the same time we don't have like a guaranteed help at every race, which I do think sometimes it makes a difference. And it's something that I definitely think next year when I'm looking at races, I'm going to think really carefully, like, what help do I need and can I get it? Because I felt like at Unbound, for example, there were girls who had like full jet wash crews washing their bikes of the mud, and like I would have benefited so hugely from a jet wash. Um, and yeah, I think it's just that like when like will it make a big difference to have help? And I think most of the time the answer is yes.
Hmm. Yeah, how did that even, like, from your perspective, how did you get involved with the collective? Was there some, like, did they approach you? Did you hear about them and approach them? Like, how did that all come about?
I heard about someone else talking to them. So I was just kind of like putting out feelers, talking to different brands. Because I'd kind of decided this year I was going to be a privateer. So I'd set on the opinion of privateer, and then I heard someone else was talking to Ribble about a new idea that was kind of this concept of not team, not privateer, but what collection of privateers. And so then I reached out to Ribble through that contact basically, and then yeah, decided that this was my best kind of middle ground, because I'd been wanting to go to the privateer route, but I'd been used to being in a team, even though I was only, to be fair, I was only in like a team for a year, but like being used to being in a team, I didn't want to lose the social aspect of having
Hmm.
like teammates. So I decided to go for it. Even if it was just going to be like a middle ground towards then maybe eventually going to, as a privateer. But it's been quite like it's been a really nice, I think it is a really nice middle ground to kind of sit in this place where like I can kind of build my own, I want to say career, but like I can build my own sponsors and like do my own thing. Like I can do my own races, but I still do have support and teammates and like a kind of community there.
Yeah, and, I certainly we notice it at races like Battle on the Beach and the Graloch, where you've got teammates like Mikey Mottram and, is it Mephaven? I don't even know how to say his name. But you have other prominent riders for the team. So you get to see him. It looks really interesting. I did find it interesting the kind of pushback that you guys got, or you folks got, like when you first started. It's kind of, yeah, very weird. But can you just confirm that you do a little more than drink coffee and sit on couches?
Yeah, I do sometimes do a little bit of riding bikes.
Yeah,
but I do a lot of drinking coffee on couches.
I mean, you got to have
That
balance.
I honestly was so, I think it was people without actually doing their research on who the riders were. Because at the end of the day, if you look at the major, like I'm going to say, if you look at the collective riders as a whole, most of them are like at their discipline actually really quite experienced. Like I'm the least experienced rider for sure, and people are experienced, have been racing at like a really high level and just have an opportunity to now pursue it as like a privateer, and it's Ribble just giving them that like kind of foundation to do that. So I think it was just people having not done their research, thinking it was a load of influencers getting like funds to do fun races, but actually it was people who maybe don't do typical road racing, even though there are road races within the collective,
Yeah.
but like people who specialize in different kinds of cycling, like really targeting specific races within that.
Yeah. Speaking of targeting specific races, are you aiming for the Worlds this year? I know we spoke last year just after you did Worlds. Like, is that on your calendar and on your radar?
So this is an undecided
Ooh.
question. I am thinking about it. It kind of depends on one, this race this weekend in Sweden, because this is I've only done one UCI race this year, and I had a bad race. I had a mechanical really early on.
Mm.
Well, I had three mechanicals early on that really affected my race. And so I haven't had that experience of like the UCI racing and whether I enjoy that this year. I did enjoy a couple that I did last year. They're shorter, and I've kind of come to realize that I actually think I'm better at more endurance gravel. And actually sometimes the UCI races are quite fast and quite short. I say short, they're still like obviously relatively long. But that potentially doesn't suit me so much. But I'm going to see if I enjoy this race in Sweden, and then I'll see whether like British Cycling will put me forward basically for the elite race again. Um, but I think like if I get selected as such for it, then I'll definitely do it. But it's just a case of whether I'm in the team or not. I think the problem is gravel's growing in popularity, and more people who maybe aren't gravel riders and maybe haven't done any gravel racing this year might say they want to give it a go, and they're maybe more on like BC's radar. Whereas I think I'm probably a big unknown, even though I've probably had my best, like this has definitely been my best season, but
Oh
like
yeah.
I've had a big season. But yeah, that we'll see basically.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're a specialist in gravel, whereas some of the others who are maybe more notable names, so are therefore, more thought of than the niche rider. And how are you finding that like rise in popularity? We've seen like, well, we've had literal Formula One superstars on start grids. Last year at the Worlds we had just riders kind of dropping into gravel and doing that, like Nico
Yeah.
Roach, Miguel Angel Lopez was doing it, which I found mad. Um, I'm trying to think who else there was that surprised me, and the name has gone, so forgive me on that. But like, well, even Alejandro Valverde just stopping his road career and then going, oh, I might as well do a bit gravel then for the Movistar team. Like, how are you finding that rise in popularity?
I think it's good for the sport. I think the only thing with the rise of like, say, for example, roadies going into gravel is like, I think there still needs to be like an element of like respect for the discipline. Because sometimes you see people going, oh, I'll just do gravel because that's easier. And I think at the end of the day, it's actually not, especially if you look at races like Tracker 360 or Unbound. I think there needs to be sometimes a little bit more respect. But for like the roadies, like we're talking like Nico Roach level, Nico is very good at gravel. Like I think if you've got the experience off road as well, then you'll be fine slipping in. I think there's also an element there where like sometimes people have never ridden off road and they think it's easy, and it's just like riding a road bike off road, and it's a whole different like set of skills. So I think it's good for the sport because it increases the depth of the field. It increases like everyone needs to be better if there are people coming in like world tour pros coming in, and then that's going to boost the level of the gravel because they're naturally just incredibly fit, and they're like they've been on proper salaries, they've been riding full time. So they're inevitably going to be very good. But I think it is good for the sport. But at the same time, it's balancing that, isn't it? It's a level of gravel still needs to kind of have its respect in its own right. And I'm not sure about people dropping in for like one race. I think that sometimes is a bit frustrating as like a gravel specialist to
Yeah.
like the whole season and then show up to a race and someone just kind of decides, oh, I'm gonna give it a go.
Yeah, I get that. I don't, like I can imagine that could be quite frustrating, just the sort of if there's that entitlement of just dropping in and going, oh, I deserve because I'm X, Y, and Z, I deserve to win or deserve to do well just because I've got this engine. Um, as we're speaking of worlds, like well, I don't know. What's your view on it, given that we've just had this mega worlds, but gravel wasn't there, cyclocross wasn't there. My super niche favorite of mountain bike eliminator wasn't there because they've got their worlds in Indonesia later this year. Like, do you think the mega worlds works, or should it have included or tried to include every discipline?
So I actually went to the Mega Worlds
Mm,
and it was pretty cool in terms of the atmosphere that there were like so many different kinds of events going on at the same time. I thought that was great in terms of it makes sense from a perspective of like even just like sustainability that like everything's in one place. People can like see stuff rather than like traveling all over the world to see different events. In terms of gravel, I think the problem with gravel was maybe that like gravel worlds only became a thing last year, so probably logistically was too fast a turnaround for them to move it to
mm,
Glasgow this year. And I was gonna say I don't really know where they do it, but I guess there's a lot of places in Scotland where you could do it, just probably wouldn't be in Glasgow.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think maybe a bit of a shame that some sports were missing from it, just in terms of like obviously gravel missed out on that whole like taking part in that atmosphere. But maybe in the future, I can see another. They are planning to do another Mega Worlds, aren't they?
Yeah, in Haute-Savoie, um, I've probably said that really badly, but in France in 4 years' time. Um,
And is gravel? I think gravel's meant to be there. Is
I
that right?
I would assume so. I know they're building a velodrome special for it, so if they're doing that level of effort, they should be doing, a little bit of finding out some cycle paths around France.
There's
Um,
some gravel racing. No, I think it might be. I know that. Yeah, I think it is meant to be in France in about 4 years' time, so that does make sense.
yeah, so it'd be good to see that. And yeah, obviously you said that you really enjoyed the atmosphere. How did you? I know you were there for a speaking engagement. Um, how did you find it generally, and do you think the concept of Mega Worlds works?
Yeah, no, generally I had a really good weekend. Like, well, I went for a very long weekend. It was like maybe a 4 day, 5 day weekend. Um, yeah, I think it was great. It meant also that there were like a lot of basically everyone in the cycling world was in Glasgow for a
Mm,
couple of weeks, which was also quite nice because then you could catch up with people or see people around. I kept bumping into people and I was like, this is so weird. Everyone's in Glasgow. It just in terms of like from a spectator perspective and like a fan perspective, I think it's great because you can maybe be exposed to disciplines that you wouldn't normally watch. I
mm.
did want to see something like artistic cycling random,
Yes.
but, but I didn't manage to get tickets for something like that.
Ah, the Germans are incredible at that. Um,
Oh, cycling.
any
I thought that'd
sort
be
of
quite funny.
indoor cycling, they're great at artistic, they're great at cycle ball, which is like 2-on-2 football on bikes, if you will.
Yeah.
And obviously they're great on the track on, other cyclists. So it's like, yeah, they're amazing. If it's indoors and got a roof, the Germans are great. Um, yeah, I saw trials, which I'd never seen. Like I know of it from motorbiking, but I'd never
Mm.
seen it on push bikes. But like, yeah, just doing these mad obstacles on like a small gear bike.
I
And
saw that on the screen. I didn't see it in
yeah,
person. Yeah, there was so much going on, and I think like people seemed super excited, like the locals as well. I think it was obviously brought a lot into Glasgow, which was great. Um, but yeah, I like the concept of it. Maybe having absolutely everything would be also really cool.
yeah, I think it would possibly a little draining though, because I'm like, there's like four road bike races today on TV. I'm like, I don't even want to watch any of it. Like, I'm just fatigued from it all.
I guess also riders who are like multidiscipline riders, you've also got that then struggle that like you might be riding a mountain bike race, then a road race the next day. I think there were a couple of riders who did that.
Yeah,
Or like a 2 day break, which is just a bit intense if you want to do worlds for both.
that is very true. But yeah, so what can we expect from the future? I believe no more road, which means that me and my daughter were there for your last, or my eldest daughter were there for your last road bike race. And there will be a clip of her at the start of this interview that people have already seen. Um, so no more road, but what is on the plan for you?
Yeah, retired from the road, even though I didn't actually probably ever race on the road. So the plan is I've just basically got to focus on this like final Gravel F Series final now, really this year, potentially World Champs if I get a spot for that. So Gravel F Series final, World Champs. I might do Europeans, but it's a week before Worlds, so that to me sounds a bit tight in terms of just like being fit for both. And then, yeah, off season, I'm gonna actually spend winter properly training this year because the past 2 years I've worked abroad on an island in the middle of nowhere for a month. So I've just been like in the gym on Zwift. So I think I'm gonna not work in the middle of nowhere this winter and do a proper season training. And then I've got a vague plan for the races I want to do next year. I think I'm going to do a similar thing in terms of like the privateering. Need to talk to different people and see what I can do next year in terms of sponsors. But it's a similar kind of idea, maybe some longer races. I'm feeling like I need to like
Longer. Oh,
yeah,
360k in a day isn't quite enough.
quite long. Well, I think I've learned from migration that I quite liked the stage race element, so I might try and look for more gravel stage races. I have had a look at GB Duro because that's now 500 kilometer stages, and that's a maybe. I don't know whether that's maybe something for a couple of years' time rather than next year. But yeah, I think there are a few races this year that I did that I definitely want to do again next year. So like migration, I want to do again. Probably the Rift as well, Tracker 360, and just like really target a few races and some like good, hopefully podium results. But yeah, that's the plan.
Wow. Well, yeah, I hope that all goes well for you. Keep up the coffee drinking. Don't let that side of your sport ever slip. And we'll have to have a catch up again soon.
Fab. Thank you so much.
There you go. A lovely episode, and I know Maddy will continue getting better and better within the world of gravel. Tune in next time for another lovely chat. Adieu.